Oh, baby, yo, yeah, summer wine.
If you are just joining us today for the first time, welcome to the program Africans in the Diaspora. This is a program whereby we meet Africans in the diaspora to share experiences and ideas about religion, business, talents, and other things like advertising your business for you. All you need to do is give us a call, send a message, or send us an email. It's your presenter Ramzy of Saidoubah Video Production and Sound System. Our today's guest is a Gambian based in Sweden by the name Momodou Malcolm Jallow. Momodou was born and brought up in Bakau in the Gambia. He moved to Sweden for about 26 years ago. Momodou is one of the Gambians that left the country at an early age with an aim and have in one way or the other achieved it through hard work and dedication. Momodou Malcolm Jallow is a human rights expert and activist with over 20 years of experience working with advocacy and training in Europe and Africa, including working with both AU and UN institutions. He was the former vice chairperson of the European Network Against Racism, NR, and chairperson of the Pan-African Movement for Justice in Sweden. He served as a city council member in the city of Malmö in Sweden, before being elected as a parliamentarian. Momodou Malcolm Jallow is the chairman of the Afro-Swedish Forum for Justice, as well as one of the left party candidates for the European Parliament. He has a strong commitment to issues related to racism, discrimination, and human rights. He has been one of the leading figures in Sweden who work to raise the issues of Afrophobia and challenge politicians and sitting governments at all levels. I will now welcome Momodou to the program Africans in the Diaspora, and he will tell us more about himself. Stay tuned because I'm sure he has a lot to tell us. Welcome to the program Africans in the Diaspora of Saidoubah Video Production and Sound System.
Thank you.
We want to know more about you and your educational background.
Yes, as you mentioned, I came from Gambia, and I was born and raised in Gambia, and there I had the possibility to go to Muslim high school, and I did my sixth form at St. Augustine's High School, senior secondary now it's called, I think, and from there I had the possibility to travel, and when I came to Sweden I had the possibility to go to university and studied social sciences and political science. And that's my education background, and I focus a lot on human rights because it's an issue that for me personally, as a person of African descent, is very close to my heart, because the realities of black people throughout history and today has been extremely difficult and challenging, and being a person of color, it is important that I try to use the platform that I have and the education that I have to raise those issues at the highest level.
So what was it like for you to grow up in the Gambia? Because out of what you said, you were in the Gambia until you completed your high school.
Yes, I had a good upbringing. I grew up in a working family, working class family. My dad was well known by a lot of people. I grew up in Bakau. I was born and raised in Bakau, and my dad was the only person that had a job in the family that was supporting my family. So we were very much dependent on him. My mom did some small businesses here and there, tried to survive. And I grew up having a normal life, to be honest. Even though it's a poor family, but we had a lot of love within the family, and that was extremely important. I have 3 siblings. I have 2 younger brothers and 1 younger sister, and they're all absolutely amazing people. And unfortunately, they don't live in Sweden. 2 of them live in the UK, and 1 of them live back in the Gambia. So I miss them a lot, and I do think about them quite often.
I can imagine. And why did you choose to come to Sweden?
Growing up in Gambia, where the possibilities were not there. You wanted to create a life for yourself and your family. And then as a young person, I lost my dad when I was quite young, just abruptly, without any. I didn't expect it was going to happen, because he was the one person that was taking care of the family every day. He was the one person that when we woke up in the morning, he would go and the breakfast was already in place, and he would go to the bakery and would buy fresh bread. He would make tea, and he'd make sure that everything is in place, and then he would go to work the whole day. And then when he comes back in the evening, even though he's tired, he'd spend a lot of time with us. We'll laugh, we'll joke. We had a loving family, and abruptly he just died. He just passed away. He was just sick and went to the hospital and never came back. And that created some kind of shock, I guess, because I'm the oldest in the family, and I found it difficult to handle, and it changed the entire dynamic of the family. So I had to figure out a way to survive, and because there were no jobs in the Gambia and there were no possibilities to be able to help my mom and take care of my siblings, I had to figure out a way to do that. And an opportunity turned up for me to travel abroad, and I took the opportunity, and I ended up in Sweden without knowing exactly what to expect. All I had was dreams, a lot of dreams and a lot of ambitions to be able to create a good life for myself and my family and my community.
That's good. And did you face challenges when you newly came to Sweden?
Yes, just like everybody else. When you travel to a new country where you don't have family and you don't have a network, and you are quite young, you have a very high ambition. Of course, you find it challenging. You see difficulties and you face them, and you try your hardest to try to overcome some of these challenges. When I came to Sweden, I met a lot of people that I grew up with in Bacau that I knew, but everybody had their own lives. They have their own families and they have their own jobs, so they don't have time to take care of another person. So you have to find your way to survive, and which I did, because luckily for me, I had a very strong upbringing, and my parents were very good role models, and I could see how hardworking they were. So I was ready mentally to be able to take on whatever was on my way, and to fight any challenges that I had on my way, because I knew what I had at stake. I knew what it means if I failed. It would not only affect me, but it would affect my entire family, and they all depended on me. So for me, it was not an option. I had to just make it, because there's so much at stake.
Yeah, and I've seen that you are leading the Pan-African movement in Sweden.
Yes, the Pan-African movement is an organization that fights for the rights of black people. It is a national organization, but we work also internationally. My passion for and my commitment to create change for the living conditions of black people, in fact, started from the first day I arrived in Sweden. Because I remember when I arrived in Sweden, when I arrived at the airport as a young guy in Stockholm, I came with a flight with a lot of white people. And when we came to Stockholm, everybody passed without any problems. They had their bags, and everybody just passed, and the security and the police were there, and they never checked anybody. So, but as soon as I came, they stopped me. And I was wondering why, because I didn't have a lot of experience, and I was just a young guy. So they asked me to follow them, which I did, and they took me to a room, and they asked me to open my bag, which I did, and they took all my clothes and put it on the floor. I was wondering why, because these are my clean clothes and my nicest clothes, and they put it on the floor. But I was nervous because I was young and never had that kind of experience before. And then They searched my pockets, you know, and it was a very humiliating moment because what happened was that I had to take all my clothes off. And being a young person and coming from Gambia, having two police officers, one man and one woman, and standing there, I'm totally naked. It was the most humiliating moment of my life, and I felt very disrespected. I felt very dehumanized because I thought in my own country, in Gambia, when Swedes come on holidays, we help them with their bags, we welcome them, we are very nice, we don't treat them that way. But when I came to Sweden, and the first thing that they did to me when I arrived was to humiliate me and dehumanize me the way that they did. It was something that triggered some form of sentiment in me that made me want to fight that kind of behavior, that kind of oppression, that kind of racism that black people face. So from that day, it was for me obvious that this is something that I also have to engage myself in so that nobody will be treated this way.
So that's why you established the organization?
Exactly. I established this organization. A bit later, I was involved in so many other organizations before I established this organization. But I was involved in so many other human rights organizations where I tried to contribute and show my commitment to the fight against racism. But the reason why this organization came up was in 2011. Something happened that changed my life. There's a university in Sweden called Lund University that had an event. It was an introduction for the new students. And every time there's an introduction for new students, they organize parties for the new students. And there was a party that was organized, and people came dressed as slaves. White people painted themselves black, and they had chains around their necks and their arms. And they came and they were supposed to be African slaves. And they came to the party, and in the middle of the party, they had a table in the middle of the dance floor, and they put these two people on top of the table, and they were supposed to auction them, you know, just like they used to do during slave trade, how they sold black people. And the white people thought this was funny. It was supposed to be a joke. So I was informed about this. I was not at the party, but I was informed about this because people know that I am a human rights defender and I fight for black people's rights. So somebody informed me about this. So when I was informed about this, I filed a police complaint for incitement for racial hatred, for that kind of behavior at the university. So when I filed a police complaint, the media took it up, and the next morning it was everywhere in every media outlet. And they said that this black man, you know, this African guy is suing the university for racial hatred. And that created a lot of commotion. A lot of people got angry because, as you probably know, I'm sure it's the same in Norway, when you're a black man and you speak out for black people's rights, they feel that you are out of place. You are not supposed to speak. You are just a guest in this country, and you should just be thankful and be very nice and not complain. So that created a lot of commotion in my life. My life was threatened every single day. They want to kill me, they want to shoot me, they want to lynch me, they want to rape me, they want to kill my kids and my family, because I was not supposed to speak, let alone sue the university. And this created a problem. My family had to move from the city that I lived to go hide somewhere else because it was getting dangerous. And we had a lot of media. I spoke in the media, talk about the problem that university students coming from one of the best universities in the country who are going to lead this country, if this is how they think about black people, then we have a problem, and we need to start to address this. So within that time when this was happening with me and my family and my life and the threats, somebody drew a picture of me. They took a picture of my face, and they photoshopped it on a picture of a slave, an enslaved black man in chains who was naked. So they said that was me, and they said this is a runaway slave. And they put my name on it, and they used the N-word, and they said, if you find him, please call this number. And they put this in the city so everybody can see. So when that happened, everything changed, because when I got that information, I got the picture, I was shocked because I saw a picture of an enslaved black man in chains, and they say he ran away. and people should find him, and it says my name, and I saw my face in it. So I filed another complaint to the police, and it became a long process of, legal process, because I wanted the law to say something about that it cannot be acceptable in a democratic society for people who just have the right to speak out against injustices to be treated that way, for their lives to be threatened that way, for them to be portrayed in pictures like that way and put in the city. And it is during that time that we started the Pan-African Movement for Justice, because we realized that we needed also a strong institution and organization that can speak out against racism and hatred against black people. And that's why we started it. And this guy that did unfortunately, the university students, they went free because the prosecutor said there's no crime committed, because that was supposed to be a private party, which I think is, I do not agree with the prosecutor, because they're normalizing racism. They're saying it's okay to have a slave auction like that. The second thing is that the guy that made the picture of me, he was also arrested, and we went to court, and he was found guilty, and we went to court. He did it again. We went to court again. We've been to court now six times, and every time we went to court, he's been found guilty, and he's been sent to jail. Now, the last time, the sixth time, is just a couple of weeks ago. We went back again because he kept sharing the same picture that he's been found guilty. He refused to accept that he, as a white man, is doing anything wrong by portraying me as a slave like that. So we went to court 2 weeks ago, and we're hoping to get a verdict from the court quite soon, and hopefully it would be, a guilty verdict again. And I'm doing that, and during these 5 times we've been to court, this is from 2012 to now, a lot of things had happened, because I cannot walk out in the streets as free as everybody else, because I took him to court and he was found guilty and he was sent to jail. So people are angry. There are racists and neo-Nazis that are very angry, and they threaten to kill me and to kill my family. So I have moved from one place to another. I have police security. And I'm extremely careful where I go and how I move, especially with my family. And it's a life that I don't think anybody wants to live, because everybody wants to live a free life. This is supposed to be a democratic country. This is not supposed to happen in a democratic country, but this is real, and it's happening. And it's not only me, it's happening to other people who are human rights defenders who are fighting against racism. Their lives are threatened every day. Their families' lives are threatened every day. And this is something that we live with. Now, I have a choice. The choice is to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to complain anymore. And then I just be quiet and just do my job. But then they will continue to do it to other people. Or I stand my ground and say, you can kill me, but I'm going to keep speaking until you stop doing what you're doing. And that's the choice that I've made. And that shaped my life. To who I am today.
That's great. So for how long have you been a politician?
I have not been a politician for a long time. I've been an activist for over 20 years. And then I came into politics after this incident that happened to me, because I wanted the politicians and the policymakers to create change, to protect people who are fighting against racism. And I feel that the politicians were not taking it seriously, because most of them, not all of them, but most of them are they are white politicians, and it's obvious because we live in Sweden, and they don't have to go through exactly the same thing that I went through. They don't understand that. They are privileged, so we need people who have experience when it comes to being victims of racism and hate, so they can come to politics and they would create policies that would protect those kinds of people. So that's why I went into politics, and I decided to join the Left Party, because they said that's the only party that defended me and defended my family. That was the only party that spoke out against racism and Afrophobia. So I decided to join that party, and they gave me the honor of nominating me to be a city councillor in Malmo. Malmo is the third largest city in Sweden. So I was elected to be city councillor for 3 years, and then after the 3 years I got into the parliament. And we just had an election now 3 weeks ago, and I got elected again for my second term in the Swedish Parliament. Yes.
So how is it like working in the Parliament now, especially being of an African descent?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a position of power. It's now we are only two people of African descent. When I came there the first day, I remember we had this ceremony where the parliament is opened, a big ceremony, and the king and queen and the prime minister, everybody is there. So when I was walking, we were walking on a line like this to get into the parliamentary building. I had a former prime minister behind me, and this former prime minister was trying to communicate with me, and I didn't know he was talking to me. Now, he was saying, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador. And I'm thinking, I'm not an ambassador, so he's not talking to me. And then a young lady ran and caught up with me and said, excuse me, sir, the prime minister wanted to say hello. And I'm saying, okay. So I turned around and he looked at me. I thought when he looks at me, he would know, okay, I'm not the guy he thinks I am. So he shook my hand and he said, it's very nice to meet you again, Mr. Ambassador. And I looked at him and I said to him in Swedish, I'm sorry, sir, I'm not an ambassador, I'm a member of parliament. Now, that shows that as a person of color, as a black person, they don't think you belong there. You have to be a visitor. You have to be an ambassador or a visitor. You cannot be a member of parliament. And that went on a couple of weeks where in the corridors, everybody speaks English to me because they assume I'm just visiting. Even members of parliament would speak English to me because they assume I don't speak Swedish, I'm just visiting. So it's an experience because they don't think that you as a black person can be a part of that space. But I'm used to that. I've been living in Sweden for a while now, so I'm used to people always assuming that I'm an immigrant that just is visiting and I cannot speak Swedish and I cannot be Swede because I'm black. But my objectives are very clear. My objectives in the parliament is to make sure that I bring in a different perspective, because I have a different experience coming from Gambia, being born poor, working class family, traveling and knowing exactly what it means to travel to a new country, living in a new country, being subjected to extreme racism and hate. That brings a total different perspective into the discussion in the parliament. And I make it my responsibility to always have that as a point of departure when whatever I speak about. Doesn't matter if I'm speaking about taxes, if I'm speaking about housing, if I'm speaking about whatever the case is, I always use my experience as a point of departure so that people like me that are watching, that live in that country would understand that somebody is also representing their voices in parliament.
And some might say like, okay, you have experienced racism in one way or the other, and how you handle it is your choice. But like, how do you handle your own?
No, I cannot isolate my own experience from the experience of other people. You know, if I can isolate my own experience, then I wouldn't even be a politician. I would just try to mind my business and just do my job and not care about everybody else. But I am a part of a bigger community, and I know what I go through. There are people that are going through 10 times worse than I'm going through. So my experience is a part of a bigger structure. It's a part of a bigger institutional racism, institutional discrimination that is taking place, where people every single day are judged based on how they look, based on what religion they have, based on what sexuality they have, sexual preference they have. I know people go through crazy experiences because of this, and now that I know exactly how that feels. So being somebody who knows how that feels, being somebody of color, it is important that whatever I do not only do it because it's me. I do it because I want to make sure that everybody else that is going through the same problem would be able to benefit from whatever solutions that I put across. And that is something that I feel we all have a responsibility, because I am where I am today because a lot of other people died and sacrificed their lives so that I'll be able to do the things that I'm doing today. There are many people that were enslaved, our great grandparents that were enslaved, and they didn't have any rights. They worked from Sunday to Sunday. They could not speak out their minds. When they tried to run, they're whipped and lynched. Today, and they kept fighting. They kept fighting, even though they knew they would lose their lives, they would lose the lives of their families. They kept fighting so that I and you and everybody here would have the privileges that we have today, that we will have the freedom that we have today, that I, as a black man, born in Africa, can come to Sweden and have the possibility to sit in the highest political institution in Sweden. That is something that I alone cannot achieve. It is thanks to everybody else before me and around me that fought so that I'll have this possibility. So it is my responsibility that whatever I do it also for the people around me, but also for the next generation, so that they can be even better, 10 times better than I am.
And okay, you came to Sweden, and you know how Gambia was before you left. Gambia is a poor country, yeah, but we have so many resources that we can use to build the country.
Yeah.
Are you, in one way or the other, thinking of helping our country develop?
Yes, yes, absolutely. For me, it's extremely important that the position that I have, the knowledge that I have, the experience that I have, is used to inspire people. Now, whether they are Gambians or whether they are Senegalese or other Africans or even other Europeans, my ambition is I am, through the things that I do, able to inspire people to feel that they can also do exactly what I've done and even better. That is my ambition. Whether it's like that or not, I cannot control that. What I know is every time I say something, every time I do something, every time I run for office and I get elected, I'm thinking, I hope at least I can inspire at least one person that can sit down and say, you know, look at that guy. He came from an extremely poor family. He came from Africa, from Gambia, a very poor country. His father died when he was quite young. There was no hope, there was nothing. And he still had a dream, and he pursued his dream, and look where he is today. And if he can do it, then I should be able to do it. To any mom or dad that can look at the TV and see me debate, whether it's in the UN or whether it's in the European Union or whether it's in the Parliament in Sweden, and say to their kids, look, that guy you can identify, he looks like you, and he's right there doing this. We are proud of him, and I hope you can be just like him or even better. That's the ambition, and that's why I do what I do, because it is not for personal gains, because if it was for personal gains I would stop it, because my life is tough. You know, when you have your life threatened every single day, when you have your family's life threatened every day, when you cannot move freely in the city that you live in, where your family cannot move freely, then it's easy to just say, you know what, this is not worth it, let me just let it go. But I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it to inspire people to be able to know that everything is possible. It's not easy. Nothing is easy. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be struggle. You know, you're going to go through a lot of struggle. You're going to sometimes even hesitate and think maybe I should just quit. You know, there's so many times that I thought about quitting, because it's difficult when you have a child and you know that this child's life is at risk because of what you say or what you do. Then sometimes you think, maybe I'm being selfish, I should just let go and let my family live in peace. But I hope people can understand that sometimes for progress to take place, there needs to be a struggle. And sometimes you need to sacrifice a lot of things for a greater cause. And that's what I want to inspire people to understand. And hopefully, if I can inspire a single person to pursue their dreams and want to create change for a better society, then I'm happy.
Great. That's great to hear. And like, we know that now the Gambia has a population of 64% under the age of 25 years. And there is a lot for those people. Do you have any word for the government or any advice that they can use, strategies they can use to help those people, because the future of the youth depend on them now?
No, definitely. I think Gambia has all potential. Africa as a whole has a great potential. You would excuse me because quite often when people talk about Gambia, I like to talk about Africa, and the reason is very simple. The reason is that we are very focused into our national entities and not realizing that those national entities that we talk about, Gambia, Senegal, Ghana, and all this, these are all constructions of the West. We didn't have Gambia, Senegal, Ghana. We had kingdoms, and they were bigger. And when the West decided in 1884 in Berlin, when they decided to demarcate Africa based on their interests, the British wanted to have places where they can, like Gambia with the river, they'll be able to transport goods and enslaved Africans. And the French took Senegal and Ivory Coast and all these other places. It was not in our own interest that they did this. They did this because they had their own interests and they wanted to exploit Africa. And we need to realize that we are the same people. We are the same people, and the border should not be a reason for us to divide ourselves in the sense that we do. We always need to look at a bigger picture. We need to look at what can we do to develop Africa as a whole. Because if we can develop Africa as a whole, it's going to benefit not only Gambia, but Senegal and the rest of Africa. And that's why when people ask me about Gambia, I always like to talk about Africa. Gambia and Africa has a very young population, unlike Europe. Europe has an aging population. A lot of people are getting old, which means that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, there will be a problem because they will not have enough people that will be able to work in order to be able to maintain the economy that we have in Europe today. So Africa don't have that problem. Most of our people, our population, our demography are young people, which means that, we have a very strong personal resources when it comes to people working. We need to make sure that we make use of that. We need to make sure that our young people, I went to Gambia just this year and then last year, and I met young people, absolutely amazing young people. I mean, I was so proud when I met these young people and I hear them speak, I hear them articulate some of the problems that we have in Gambia and how they think these problems should be tackled and solved. I hear them speak in terms that, in no uncertain terms, in very, very strong terms, about the changes that they want to see and how they want these changes to take place. And they are very capable people. These are young people. When I was growing up, it wasn't like that. These are very aware people, young people, youth, that I'm quite sure, if given the opportunity to be able to be part and parcel of the change that we see in Gambia and Africa, they will be able to change Africa in a way that we've not seen before. The only problem is, quite often, we don't want to give them this chance. We like to talk about youth empowerment. We like to talk about we want change. But when it comes to giving them the actual possibilities for them to be able to participate actively in creating change, then we don't want to do that. I don't know why. I think people are power hungry, and I think people are, especially the older generation, with all due respect, they need to somehow understand that things have changed. It's a new generation, and the young people are very much in tune with the changes that are taking place not only in Africa but globally. And that knowledge that they have, that internet savvy that they have, is of great, great value for the changes that we need in Gambia. If we're going to be able to follow and be able to be in the same line as the rest of the world, we need to make sure that we have people that are in the same line with the rest of the world, and the young people are. And it's just unfortunate that we do not make use of them. And the same applies to women. We know in Gambia, for example, when there was time, when Jammeh was there and we were talking about the possibility of creating change, the men were not the one that went out. It was the women that went out. The women that started what I think they called the Calabash Revolution, it was the women, it was our mothers that went out in the streets and wanted to sacrifice their lives. They knew the risks that was involved getting out the streets and demonstrating against Jammeh. They went out and they took that risk. Not once, not twice, they did it over and over again. And when you go to Gambia today at 6 o'clock in the morning, you go to the market, you'll see women out up there early in the morning selling their vegetables, and the same women would run home and they would do the laundry and they would cook the food and they would take care of the kids and they would take care of the home. And yet when it's time to make decisions about the country, about the living conditions of people, we leave women behind. It's not right. It just doesn't make sense. You know, they are half of the population. So which means that when you exclude them, you exclude the productivity into half. You divide it into half. And you're losing 50% of your potential productivity. So it doesn't make sense. What makes sense is that you bring in everybody that is able to produce, that is able to participate in developing and creating change, and you give them the environment that is necessary for them to be able to develop their potential to the best and contribute to the best. I've had the possibility to meet great people in my life, but one person that I value very much is a man, a civil rights leader called Reverend Jesse Jackson. He just gave me a prize called the Global Leadership Award a couple of months ago, and I appreciate that more than anything else. He said something that resonates with me, and he says, you know, when you have two seeds of the same kind and you plant these seeds at the same place with few meters apart and you build a wall in between, on the one side of the wall you have rain and you have sun and you have photosynthesis. On the other side of the wall, the rain doesn't penetrate the wall, the sun doesn't penetrate the wall, so it doesn't have the necessary conditions to grow. Even though both seeds are of the same kind, of the same quality, and you planted them at the same time, the same place, the one that has sunlight and rain and photosynthesis is going to grow and is going to blossom and is going to bear fruits. The other one that is on the other side, even though of the same quality, is going to struggle to grow. Not because it has a lesser quality, but because we do not provide it with the necessary conditions to grow. So when you have women in the country who have the same quality as men, and you refuse to give them the necessary conditions to grow and reach their potentials, they would not grow. They would struggle to grow. And they would not be able to be added to the productivity, because all of a sudden you only have one tree with fruits instead of having two with fruits, double the amount. The same thing applies to youth. They are there, they have the world's, best potential, but you're putting them behind this wall and you creating conditions that are harmful for them, or that would make it impossible for them to grow and blossom and be the best that they can be. So what happens is that we lose the youth and the woman on the other side who knows, maybe that if you had given them the chance, maybe we would have the doctor that would find the medicine to AIDS. Who knows, if you give this young person a chance and the conditions to grow, we might find the next Nelson Mandela. But you would not know if you don't break the wall and create the conditions for them to grow and reach their potential. That's what our leaders need to understand, that we need to make sure that we break this wall and we create the conditions necessary for all of us to reach the potential that we can get and be the best that we can get. And only when we do that, we'll see the change that we need to see in Africa and in Gambia.
I quite agree with you on that. And there are youths also like me who left the Gambia at a very early age and came to Europe. What advice do you have for us? Because we are also in the verge of growing up, and no matter what, we have African descent. And we have the same opportunities as you have when you come, or even more now. So we can do whatever we want, but then what advice do you have for us?
One thing that I always emphasize is education. Education is extremely important. I remember when I came to Sweden and I got to know that you can go to school, primary, high school, university, and you don't have to pay. It is financed by taxpayers. I was quite surprised, because where I came from, you paid a lot of money to be able to go to primary school. You know, I'm not even talking about high school or university. And I know a lot of European countries, you pay a lot of money to be able to have higher education. So coming to Sweden and I got the opportunity to go to school, for me was a dream come true. So I made use of every opportunity that I had to be able to enlighten myself, to learn the language. It's extremely important that when we live in a country, we can maintain our own languages, our mother tongue, but at the same time we should also learn the language of the country. I think it's important we win. As many languages as we can learn, we should try to learn. So I learned the language, and I went to school. I went to university, and that opened up a lot of opportunities. I mean, with that said, I have to say, it doesn't mean automatically that just because you go to university you get a job, because even here I met a sister today that was telling me I have 3 degrees and I still can't find a job. So we have to acknowledge that that's a problem. But education does not only mean also going to school and learning the Eurocentric knowledge, learning mathematics and geography and European history and all that. It means also learning about your own history, about who you are and where you come from. Because when you live in Europe, you are bombarded with propaganda. You're bombarded with information that is quite Eurocentric. And everybody around you, when you go to school, everybody around you that have a European background know about this history. When you read the books that you read in school, quite often the narratives that you read in these books are Eurocentric narratives. When you look at the characters in the books and the literature that you read, the characters are all white, and quite often, great characters are always white, and then the negative characters are people of color. When you look at the authors of the books that you read at school, they are all of European origin. You can hardly find, if any of the African authors' books that you presented to you at school, in the European schools. And it makes sense because we are in Europe. That's what happens. The sad thing is that in Gambia and in Africa, we still force our children to read books that are Eurocentric. Because when I went to primary school, I remember, I was not allowed to speak Mandinka or Wolof or Fulani. I was punished because of that. Nobody was allowed. You are only allowed to speak English. So you are punished for speaking your language in Africa, because we want to promote Eurocentric value. We want to promote Eurocentric languages, European languages, Eurocentric values, Eurocentric customs, Eurocentric stories. That's what we teach our children. In primary school, you read about Peter and Jane and apples, and you're thinking, I don't even have friends called Peter and Jane. I've never seen apples. Why am I reading these stories? Why am I reading something that has to do with the community that I come from? Why aren't I reading about my forefathers? Why aren't I reading about that? In Europe, that's what you do. So when you educate yourself and educate our children, it's good that they go to the schools here, they learn according to the curriculum, they go to university, they get a degree. That's good. But whilst they're doing that, at the same time, it is our responsibility as parents, as uncles, as whatever, for us to be able to, as a community, to educate ourselves and our children about our history, about our customs, about our traditions, about great African leaders, both men and women, in the African continent. That is our job, because if we don't do that, most of our young people, they grow up being lost. They grow up internalizing the racism that they face every day, so they don't even think they are black. And those that think they are black, they hate themselves. I had parents that would say to me, my daughter came home one day and says, why am I black? I want to be as white as my classmates. Or I want to be as white as, this princess in the books. All the books that you read, all the princesses are white, and they have blonde hair. And the children, they learn through this. So if they don't see people or characters they can identify with, they feel that maybe there's something wrong with them, and they want to be the best characters, and it makes sense. So it is up to us that when we have children, we make sure we buy books that they can read at home with characters that look like them. Beautiful characters that are doctors, that are lawyers, that are nurses, that are princesses, that are kings, that are police officers, so they can see that, okay, I can also be all these things. We need that kind of education. And of course, our language, we need to maintain our language, because our languages are dying out. Because in Africa, at least in Gambia, you're not allowed to speak the language, our mother tongue, in school, and that makes it impossible for us to be able to maintain the language. And when you travel here, it even makes it even more complicated, because when you don't speak the language for a longer period of time, you get to forget it. So we need to try to maintain that, because if we know who we are, then the chances are we'll be more proud of who we are. And that's something extremely important in education. So education, 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 that's something that we need to focus on. We cannot be living in Europe for 20 years, 30 years, and you hardly can speak the language. Personally, I think it's a problem. You cannot be living in Europe and you don't believe in your ability to be able to do exactly as good as everybody else. Because when I came to Sweden, I met people that said, you want to go to school? We've been here for a long time. We went to school, we've seen people, they don't have jobs, they will not employ you, you're going to be cleaning toilets, you know. And if I had listened to a lot of people, I would not go to university, I would not go to school, because I would say, what's the point? But I insisted, and I did my best, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. And this is just one step, because I have extremely high ambitions, and I'm hoping to pursue my ambitions to the best of my ability to reach whatever there is a possibility to reach, because I don't think there is a limit. Normally they say the sky is the limit, but I think for me and for many black people, young people, the sky is just a start. It's not a limit, it's just a start.
And some of us are looking up to you, you know. I also want to know, like, growing up, did you have somebody you looked up to, like?
My mother. I didn't have anybody to look up to when it comes to my surroundings, especially in Sweden, because most of the people that I had around me had almost given up. You know, you're not going to make it here, so why try? And when I watch media, every time I watch media, every time I see black people, it's only negative imagery. It's always people selling drugs, people committing crimes. It's always poverty in Africa, starving children. So it was difficult to have some kind of a role model around me in the immediate environment where I can say, you know, I just want to be like that. But there were people that I read about. And that's why I mentioned earlier on the education. I read about Patrice Lumumba. I read about Kwame Nkrumah. I read about a lot of our African leaders that I know did amazing work in trying to empower black people. And I had them as a role model. I read about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And I had all those people as role models. And I saw some of the difficulties that they went through, that all of these people were killed whilst they were struggling to create change. And they did not back up. They continued until they died. And I'm thinking, if they are able to do that, so that I and many other people can be liberated and we'll be able to live free and have better lives, I wanted to do the same. And I still want to do the same. I want to be able to struggle and do everything within my power to create the change that is necessary for people of African descent and around the world, globally, to be able to live decent living conditions without any racism, without any discrimination, to eradicate poverty and all the oppression that I see people going through every day, not only in Africa, in the Middle East, in South America, in Europe. I think our oppression are very connected. All oppression is connected, and we cannot fight one oppression without fighting the other. So we need to find ways and means that I contribute what I can, you contribute what you can, somebody else, and then we come together and we support each other in order to be able to create change. And my role models have done that, and I think I want to be at least a role model for other people, young people like you, to be able to see, so that you can see it's possible and this is doable. If other people can do it, we can do it. And the conditions that we have today are more conducive than the conditions that our great-grandparents had, because they could not speak. They could not, you have a TV crew, you have all these things that you can do. They didn't have that possibility. They had to hide, they had to dig tunnels and so on. So we have this possibility, and I'm inspired by them, and hopefully when you are inspired by me, you'll take it even to higher heights and inspire other people that are coming after you.
It's impressive to hear that from you. And do you have any advice for the youths back at home, those in the Gambia?
Yes, the advice I have for young people in Gambia is that wherever there is oppression, there is resistance. And all they need is to make sure that this resistance is continuous. You cannot give up. You have to make sure that you keep resisting, because that's the only time you will see change. And I'm advising them to keep doing what they're doing. Throughout history, there has always been difficult times, there's always been resistance. If you look at the slave trade, there was resistance. It ended. If you look at the women's movement, there was a time, even in this country and Sweden, where women could not vote, women could not walk, women were just allowed to be at home and take care of their families. They resisted. They went out in the streets and they tried and they tried and they tried and they tried and they won. Now they have the rights that they didn't have then. If you look at apartheid, it's resistance. Now we have democracy in South Africa. The same way, if you look at the colonizers, we fought and we died and we showed resistance, we became independent. So resistance pays, and if it's consistent, it creates change. So let them continue what they're doing. Let them not be discouraged. Let them keep fighting. Let them keep speaking out. And let them organize, because resistance needs to be organized. If you don't organize, then you will try 1,000 things and it wouldn't work. But if you organize and you form a movement, then you are able to speak with one voice. You're able to have weight and strength as a group and numbers. And that's something that's extremely important that we need to see in Gambia. And I know, and I'm 100% sure, the young people in Gambia are more than capable of doing that. And we are seeing it already, and change is on its way. I'm 100% sure. If there's one thing I'm sure of, is that I know change is on its way, because the next generation, young people, are people that do not apologize for their words. There are people that do not apologize for their opinions. There are people that really know what they want, and they would not stop until they get it. So keep moving. No matter what you do. I think it was Martin Luther King that says, if you cannot fly, make sure you run. If you cannot run, make sure you crawl. But whatever you do, don't stop moving. So let them keep moving. Let them continue fighting, and I'm positive that change is going to come.
Sure, and we hope for change.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was amazing to have you on the program Africans in the Diaspora, and I'm so impressed by your words.
Thank you.
I'm sure many other youths out there have learned one or two things from this.
I hope so.
With Saidoubah video production, we work to your satisfaction.
Oh, baby, yo, yeah, summer wine.